talking about this one over here? Or where?
No.
Highway 66?
We want to do it, we can talk more after.
Okay.
Ready?
Preferred.
Alright.
Crossing over the level.
I call to order the meeting for Tuesday, September 15th, 2020. Can I have a moment of silence for all those serving inside and outside our borders, please? All right. Will you please stand and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, can we have roll call, please, Mary?
Mary Green Sandoval.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Larry Clark.
Here.
Nick Ralston.
Here.
Spencer Bradman.
Here.
Fred Blum.
Here.
Jeremiah Overman.
Here.
Perfect. If I can remind everyone to speak into their microphones, please. Fantastic. Here's everybody good here. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda, please?
Move to approve consent agenda as presented.
Just the regular.
Or regular agenda as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Your aye, right? Not nay.
Nay, whatever. Yeah.
You do not approve of
Correct.
the agenda.
Correct.
Okay. Motion carried. Audience participation. Shirley?
No,
No.
I already spoke my piece.
Okay. All
Okay.
right.
I'm just
Moving.
listening.
Okay.
Thank you.
You can speak. What was your piece? I didn't hear it.
Well, it was about the flag in the park down at Riverside, G Park. There was no light on it for the September 11th thing, so I voiced my opinion to the town, and he voiced his opinion back to me. And so after the light was installed, he said, let me know what I thought, and so I came to let him know what I thought. And it still doesn't light the flag properly, but it really lights up the park really well, the skate park. But it still isn't lighting the flag like it should. But I don't know, you put it on the ground, the kids and all, I don't know what'll happen to it there either, so I don't know whether there's a good way to do that or not, but that was my news. I gave today what he told me to go see how the light was working, and I did, so I reported today, and that's what I did.
Thank you, Shirley. All right. Moving on to approval of the consent agenda. I want to make a note that if we want to make changes to the consent agenda, we can do that now before we approve it. Were there any changes to the consent agenda requested?
I made an amendment to the consent agenda for tonight.
Okay.
And the amendment was the Martin Marietta contract.
We pulled that down.
It was on the consent, I placed on the consent agenda where it already approved it. Yesterday there were some minor edits from their contract person that I spoke to Kendra about. The address on the original contract was incorrect. And Martin Marietta tried to reduce the liability and waiver, and Kendra said no. But she did clarify it in better language for them to approve.
Okay,
Agreed
so
to.
we're going to move that down to action item H.
You can leave it on consent if you want, you can discuss it more. Either way is fine.
So you didn't make a change to the consent agenda. You made a change to a consent agenda item.
Consent agenda item, I added one.
No, the agenda was amended yesterday.
Okay.
And it's in the Dropbox, but if you upload it prior to the time that the new packet went in, you don't have all of the information.
Okay.
It's in the new packet if you want to re-upload.
Okay.
That's why I put the memo on your table.
Gotcha. Okay.
There's minor edits.
It doesn't sound like it's worthy of the action item.
The scope and cost did not change at all. It was trying to reduce the government immunity and liability, and Kendra said no, either take it or leave it, and Martin Marietta is going to take it.
Perfect. All right. So
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
I have a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Alright. Moving on to action items. Ordinance 790, an ordinance of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Platteville adopting a backflow for prevention and cross-connection control program as part of the town's Public Works Authority as a water and sewer utility provider. Mr. Ray.
Thank you, Mrs. Mayor. Just so the board knows, as well as you, Mayor, the first three items, A, B, and C, I want to defer to Mr. Brandt to address the board.
Thank you, Mr. Rankin, Mrs. Mayor, members of the board. This is an ordinance that is required via the backflow prevention, cross-connection control, backflow prevention rule from the health department. It basically, right now, it gives the town some teeth to actually enforce the backflow prevention rule. That rule right now applies, technically it applies to like a newer sprinkler system or something like that. If you put one in, that's just a standard practice to put a backflow preventer on that. But right now it is commercial and multifamily more than a duplex is who we have to make sure and survey and make sure there's no cross connections that would require one. If we find any type of a situation that would require one, this ordinance then will give us the ability to enforce and have that backflow, testable backflow device put in place to protect the town drinking water system. So this is a rule that's been in play, I believe it was 2017. Some communities have attempted to bluff their way through this, and I heard from the state inspector when they were doing our inspection that there was a situation where a property owner came back and said, yeah, the state rule says you have to do this, but it doesn't give you the authority, and you don't have an ordinance that says you have the authority to do this, so I don't have to do this. And so that's when we talked with Kendra, she was able to get it. Several other communities that she works with already had one that they had adopted, and so she based this on those rules. So that's why this is coming before you tonight.
Any other questions, comments, or concerns?
We don't really have an option on this then, right? It's basically a state mandate.
Technically,
Thank you.
technically it's not, this rule is not a state mandate, but if we don't have this rule, we will have a hard time complying with the rules that we have to comply with from the state. So in a roundabout way, you could say that, but in a technical term, it is not. If that makes sense.
Absolutely.
Okay.
As long as regulation of the state says everybody do it, then it leaves it up to each municipal town on how they do it.
Right, because you have to send people out to survey all the properties in theory, right?
Correct.
It's unfunded, right?
We don't get any money from the state, no. It's self-funded by the town.
Any other questions, comments, or concerns? I would entertain a motion, please.
I move to approve ordinance 790, an ordinance of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Platteville adopting backflow prevention and cross-connection control programs as part of the town's Public Works Authority as a water and sewer utility provider.
I have a motion and a second. We're gonna do things a little differently moving forward. We're gonna go around the room and we're gonna do votes one at a time. And if somebody's opposed, I would like maybe an explanation. If you agree, maybe let's do an explanation. Nick?
Aye.
Mary, can we do roll call, please?
Nick Ralston,
Aye.
Spencer Bradnan,
Aye.
Fred Blum,
Aye.
Larry Clark,
Aye.
Jeremiah Overman.
Aye.
Okay. moving on. Agreement for services, sidewalk repair replacement, J.D. Chavez, concrete and paving. Mr. Rankin?
I defer to Mr. Brown.
Mr. Brand? Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Mayor. This is a group of projects. Many of them are around the outside of, well, I say the outside of Coronado Park, but kind of the interior portion of the Bella Vista subdivision. Last year we did several of the sidewalks along the roadways in Bella Vista, and we also repaired several of the roadways in Bella Vista last year. We've got significant trip hazards, a lot of tree roots and that kind of thing that are causing problems with these sidewalks. And so we put this out. Then after I put it out, you'll notice on the proposal there was an additional 240 square feet that was listed on there. One of the contractors had bid that additional 240 because we discovered it while we were out walking the rest of it, and I had missed getting it marked. So then I just took their price for everybody else's price for the 4-inch repair that would be, and assumed I was gonna, if their number wasn't actually bid, I was gonna confirm it with them, but it turned out that it was J.D. Chavez that I was looking at it with when we discovered the extra, and he had already included it in his numbers. I would recommend that we accept the contractor, the agreement with J.D. Chavez to do those repairs. There's also some repairs over off of Goodrich Court, a spot on both the road and the sidewalk that has sunk considerably and created a hazard along the sidewalk there. So all of that is factored into this, but I did ask the board to extend the not to exceed number to 40,000 versus the 29,000. Because there were a couple other areas after we put this out and actually got the numbers that then when I was driving down another road, I realized, hey, we've got an issue here, or we've got another spot here that needs to be taken care of. We just repaired a couple of water line valves in Main Street where it's literally gutter and sidewalk. And so we had to tear up the sidewalk to do that just in the last couple of days. So we've got a few additional that need to be done that will be identified. So I would be happy to answer any questions anybody has. JD has done really good work for us in the past, both paving and concrete. We're just asking to approve his portion of the concrete, his bid on the paving project, which is next. We're a little higher. So.
You mentioned that they've done work for the town before, and you've been satisfied with their performance?
Very much so.
Okay. I'm looking at these numbers, and their bid is significantly less than the next highest bidder. That stands out to me when I first look at it. But if you've done work with them, or they've done work before, and you're happy with it.
How many years have they worked for us?
Off and on over the last 12 years.
12 years.
If it does go up to the 40,000, that's gonna still be within budget, or you won't put anything?
No, and I apologize, I did not mark the sidewalk budget in my
I just think you
no.
don't plan for the worst, so if it does go to 40,000.
Right.
As an overreach, I mean, that's not gonna put anything.
Typically, we're right around 36,000 in the sidewalk.
I have the graph, I think 35 is the sidewalk maintenance fund, but some of the costs will come out of the water fund and the sewer fund. Because what David mentioned on Main Street, that's a sewer for water line repair.
Right.
So that won't come out of the sidewalk maintenance fund, that'll be separate.
Okay. So sidewalk fund, you said roughly about 30, or sidewalk pavement, 35,000, and you'll split the difference a little bit there
With the water fund on a couple of these repairs, correct, yeah. And it'll be the same thing on the paving. There'll be a couple of them where we're paving back where we had to do a water line repair.
Yeah.
And so that won't be coming out of the maintenance costs for streets. That'll be coming out of the water fund for maintenance and repair. So.
Just ask, because it's getting down into the year.
It is.
I'd like to clarify, companies, Commander, my budget book.
I've got mine right here.
Okay.
Do you want this?
I'll steal yours, Mayor.
I need to bring it.
I always,
Those numbers the same in both accounts?
they better be.
Oh, you don't have the most recent financials.
Oh, okay.
Oh, sorry.
Nope, that's okay.
Holding out on you, man.
I know, jeez. I don't want to touch that.
Good question, Nick. I apologize that I didn't have that off the top of my head.
So I gotta throw your curveball, put you on your heels. Come on, tell
He likes being ambushed like that.
Get the sweat beat.
I got him outside before the meeting.
I've probably looked past it 3 times here trying to find it. That's what I get for not having my marked sheets.
Sorry about that.
There it is. We had 73 budgeted.
We had 73 budgeted for revenue, we had 30,000 budgeted for patching. So I'd recommend 30,000 on the sidewalk maintenance fund, the additional 10,000 on the capital improvement or the water fund.
Okay. So this
Thank you.
would pretty much, I mean, it's coming down the end of the year, pavement's gonna be stopped, this will probably just expand that.
It would just be one less budget amendment we'd have to do at the end of the year.
What's the timeline for this? When are you trying to get it done?
Um,
Have they committed to anything?
The agreement that we have put together has them being done by October 30th or 31st. I think it's 30th because I think 31st is a Saturday this year. We asked them to be done by mid-October if possible, but no later than October 30th.
And have you talked to, because I get and understand having projects and then having, kind of gotcha moments where you're spending a little extra here or there. But I feel like you driving around finding other things are not gotcha moments. Those are in two. So you're adding to the project. I just would feel more comfortable if they were made aware of it and able to actually provide a quote on the additional work.
Fair enough. And I can have them, we could approve for the amount that they did here for this, and then I can come back and have a secondary quote for the additional work if that's what the board would prefer.
That's just my preference. Well, that delay the work getting done, wait for another board meeting for them to, when the weather's nice and they're gonna come in for these 2 weeks and get it done, but now they have to wait till another week to get a board group review the next fix.
There may be some of that. I can't speak to it for sure. I know that the pavement guy, when he was down looking, the next contractor will be looking at it, there was a couple other spots that he was like, hey, did you consider this down there? And so he's already looked at it and said, when we're in town, we could get that taken care of for you if you want us to. But I can't speak to it for sure. Yes, there would be a little bit of a delay. Is that going to be significant? I don't know. Right now, our next board meeting is the 29th,
The
right?
special meeting scheduled for the 29th, otherwise it's October 6th. And contractors, as you probably are well aware, they will always find another project to do. And the asphalt conversation that's next will probably be the same conversation. But I talked to David about this year. We held off on any patching repairs for asphalt or streets and sidewalk until now to make sure the budget would sustain it and go after the worst areas. Bella Vista is a huge liability for the town because of the trip hazards, the tree roots, so on and so forth. Years and years ago, we worked on Bella Vista, now it's time. And I hear on occasion how the town never focused on Bella Vista, which is not completely accurate, true. We put over 100,000 in the patching last year, Bella Vista. We want to focus on that, not because of that, because it needs it. But driving around town, there's areas of cracks. I see Rogers Farm, Stevens Circles, Reed Road. So these are the worst areas. So I think we should at least do what J.D. Chavez is offering for his price. At least focus on those areas that are identified, and if we have more to do next year, then we'll package it in the spring. Just keep it simple, straight and clear. I would not recommend to the board to limit it for the exact amount. I'd give David some leeway because there's always a change order somewhere. You know, so that's my recommendation.
Any questions, comments, concerns?
So, just clarifying, we are agreeing to 40,000, up to 40,000 then?
My recommendation to the board is agree to 30,000 out of the sidewalk maintenance fund, and an additional amount at your discretion out of the water fund, because.
You said something about possible capital improvement fund?
I don't know if I wanna go there yet, because I've gotta pay for detention ponds yet, and we don't know what that's gonna be.
Okay.
So I retract that comment on capital improvement.
Then go back to prioritizing liabilities, like you said, and then focus on that, and then prioritize it next year.
Yeah. There's always gonna be that every year.
Yeah.
We'll miss stuff, we're human, we'll focus on. So when Dave and I had this conversation, I asked him specifically to focus on Bella Vista, because I knew that was an issue. And part of it is if the kid's walking, that sidewalk, which is part sidewalk, part asphalt along Main Street, that's the town's responsibility. So from the first exit to the back of the bank, Dave and I walked that is horrendous. I can't believe the kids are walking on that. So we're gonna rip that up, and that's part of the Bella Vista improvements, is making sure that's a safe sidewalk. That's ADA accessible for some of those kids and adults that go back and forth through there.
That portion is listed as the new install, so you can see we had bids of as little as 5,700 and as much as 18,000 for that section.
Any other questions, comments, concerns?
So design, kind of what you were saying, focus on Bella Vista and maybe not so much what David driving around town.
To keep it clear right now, because I know we're gonna have more this next year, I would ask the board to approve the 30,000 out of the sidewalk fund and an additional 5 out of the water fund, just to cover those sidewalk repairs. But not to say we'll find some more stuff, just for change orders. That's my recommendation to the board. Is that good with you, Dave?
That's fine.
Want to make sure, because it does say 40,000 there in the approval.
That was the recommended.
So that with the
We're gonna amend it.
We're gonna.
amended to 35, okay.
Well,
30,000 from that.
30,000 and 5,000.
That's my recommendation to the board.
So total,
35.
35. Okay.
I entertain a motion.
Move to approve an agreement for services for sidewalk repairs, replacement, the J.D. Chavez concrete and paving in an amount not to exceed 35,000, subject to attorney review, and authorize the mayor to execute the same.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call, please, Mary.
Spencer Bradnan,
Aye.
Troy Blum,
Aye.
Larry Clark,
Alright.
Jeremiah Overman,
Aye.
Nick Ralston.
Aye.
All right, motion carried. Moving on. Agreement for services, asphalt pavement patching, St. Vrain Companies, Mr. Brand.
Thank you, Mrs. Mayor. Very similar conversation to the one we just had. St. Vrain Companies has done work for us in the past. We've worked with them 2 years ago was the first time we worked with them, and then we worked with them again last year. They are a smaller local company out of the Longmont area, Berthoud area, that they kind of specialize in kind of our size projects. They can do some bigger stuff, but they don't go after a lot of the big projects where, you know, they're overlaying I-25 or significant roadways for the county or anything like that. They like doing the small patch. They are, I think he said, for 15 years they've been the on-call patch crew for the city of Longmont, and that's partially where I got their name and recommendation from. They've done good work. They come in very quickly. Part of this is the Grand Avenue / County Road 32 overlay, and basically from about 30 to 40 feet east of the railroad tracks, 475 feet up the hill, this would be a full width leveling course and then an 1.5 inch overlay of that portion, that if any of you have driven that in the last 3 years, you know what a minefield that is getting up to the cemetery. It does not get us all the way to the new patch that was done up the hill last year, where we had Mark Marietta rebuild it. But we got the worst of the pothole areas out of there. This bid actually came in, the $21,000 was a lot less than what I was anticipating it to be at, but part of the reason it was so much less expensive is, number one, it was the thickness, but number two, he can actually put a full width paver on there and do one lane at a time, and versus the small patching stuff that they're trying to do for us that's 3, 4, 5, 8 feet wide. So this is very easy for him, is the term he used to me, to do that. Part of what we're looking at is we're in the design right now to put a new concrete from the edge of CDOT's right of way all the way across both sidings and both railroad tracks to the other side of Front Street, and then an apron into Front Street, and we'd like to do that all in concrete, but that's north of $350,000. And talking with the town manager, we're anticipating 2022 or 2023 before that's going to fit into the budget. And so right now, we've been spending a fair amount of time and material trying to keep the potholes less potholy, but we haven't done as good a job as we would like to see it grow faster than we can fill them and get them taken care of over there. So I know that we will get a fair number of compliments on the fact that we've done this. Now, the reason I'm fairly confident in this, it's not gonna, this is a short-term fix. I'm not gonna lie to anybody and try to say this is a long-term fix, because it's not. It's not thick enough to deal with the truck traffic for a long period of time. But we did do, from the very east side of the tracks, about 40 feet out 4 years ago, J.D. Chavez did an 1.5 inch or a 2 inch overlay in there for us, and it's still holding up fairly well today. So this will buy us some time to be able to get that bigger project put in. Hopefully we'll have all the easements and be able to do South Front Street and tie that all in as hopefully one project when it's all said and done.
So are they gonna patch what's there and then overlay over the patching then?
Basically, they're putting in a leveling course, so they're not gonna dig it out and patch it. They're just gonna fill them up so that it's level when they lay the new overlay over the top of it. What we're doing in the other parts of town is they're cutting out the asphalt, they're going down a full 5 inches. They're gonna lay it in 2.5 inch lifts. This one would be them going in and just putting a very small skim coat. In some places it'll be 3 inches deep, and in some places it'll be, you know, a 1/4 inch thick, a 1/2 inch thick, to level it, and then they'll come in with their paver and then put a full 1.5 inches over the top of that. So I would recommend that we go with St. Vrain Companies. There again, like Troy had mentioned, we usually try to ask for a little more than what the actual bid is, just because we end up with some overages. There is one spot on Cherry. I had several other areas on Cherry Avenue, in the 400 block of Cherry Avenue, that I had marked out. There was a big RV parked right near Dan Dennison's house, and I missed a fairly significant section along the gutter right there that should have been replaced. And I would, while we're already patching some other spots on Cherry, I'd really like to be able to do that one. And I did mention that to Rick, the owner of St. Vrain, and he was more than happy and able to take care of that. So I have not measured that one, so I don't know exactly what my amount would be. So I would ask for at least an additional $5,000 if I could to make sure that we get that.
So additional 5 on top of the already 10 you're asking for?
No. Well, I mean, if we can not to exceed 80, that would be fantastic. But if you, like the sidewalk, if you wanted to back off from the additional 10 I asked for, then I would ask for at least 5 there. But the 80 would be a much more comfortable number, and we've got those funds in the streets fund and scheduled to be expended this
Well, we
year.
budgeted how much?
Well, initially we budgeted $250,000 in the streets fund, but we're gonna use some of that toward another project, but,
full 80,000 fits within our budget?
If it's within the budget, and we scaled it back drastically, because I didn't want to spend the full amount on just patching. And as we go into next month, there's gonna be a full conversation on patching throughout the town. And not just patching sidewalks as well, but actually, I want to start installing new sidewalks every year. And just depends on the money and funding. But it is well under what's budgeted, but keep a note that the remaining amount of those funds are going towards 32.5 project.
Well, and I would like to say we were very thankful we had 6 bidders for each project, which there have been times where we've had 1 or 2 bidders sometimes, and on the years that it's really good for them, we don't see very many. On this paving proposal, Martin Marietta, who in my opinion is the creme de la creme, they are the best in the business. At least our experience with them and with the person that does their estimating on the small jobs. I appreciate the fact that he bids every project that I send to him every year. And last year, the project up on Cemetery Hill was the first time in 5 years that their numbers were even close. This year, their numbers were close, but they weren't close enough. So, you know, you can see that we would use up most of the additional 10,000 that I was asking for if we went with Martin Marietta's bid. But I really believe that St. Vrain has done a good job. Well, I don't just believe, I know St. Vrain has done a good job on the small stuff. And because he's got the full-size paver, I'm not overly concerned about it not being a good job on the overlay up here as well.
Any other questions, comments, or concerns?
I just want to say, in history here, though, whenever we've had a bid something like this, we've always given the public works or some leeway to something over rent or some over cost. We've given that in a bid. So I don't think we need a penny pinch. Some work that needs to be done. So that's my opinion. So I'm good with giving them an extra 10,000 to go with. I don't think we need to go every bid and go to the penny of everyone that comes in. And you know, because there's always things that come up like, oh, we would have to do this or this needs to be added. And I think we just need to continue that kind of a thought process.
Okay.
I agree. I move to approve an agreement for services for asphalt paving and patching with St. Vrain Companies in an amount not to exceed $80,000, subject to attorney review, and authorize the mayor to execute same.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call, please, Mary.
Troy Blum,
Aye.
Larry Clark,
Aye.
Jeremiah Overman,
Aye.
Nick Ralston,
Aye.
Spencer Brennan.
Aye.
Motion carried. Okay, moving on. Temporary construction easement pavement patching. Sorry. Yes, no. Oh my goodness. Temporary construction easement, community complex detention ponds, Moorhead. Mr. Brand? Mr. Brand?
I'll take the roll.
Okay. You guys are really killing me over here.
I knew the first two I was going to defer to David because he worked on these projects. I actually worked on this TCE with Lynn Moorhead and her sister Susan Dinas. Some 5 years ago, Mrs. Dinas, their mother passed away, and they've inherited her estate at 100 Division Avenue, or Boulevard. It's actually going to be up for sale here not too long ago. They had a auction last month. But I've been working with Linda. She's probably the one that comes down and really takes care of the property. I haven't met Susan yet. But she's very amenable. She understands what we're trying to do with the detention pond project. And the purpose is, in your packet, you'll see a 50-foot easement from the surveyor, Northern Engineering, that we want to access off Division directly to that detention pond behind the community center. And use that basically from October 1 to December 31st is the time frame on the TC, on the agreement. Going by the community center, number one, it's a pretty tight squeeze. We'll probably tear up more than we resolve. Plus, the community center is used quite often on big trucks going down there through Reynolds Avenue. These trucks would come out and they go back down 32.5 preferably. As long as Martin Marietta doesn't have that tore up. It's a timing issue, so we have to deal with all that. So for a whopping sum of $10, they agreed They both signed. I've had multiple, conversations with Linda. She wants some more reassurance on just being held harmless and not being liable. Good questions that they sell the property before this is done. I said this would basically run with the property, so the new owner would have to be notified of it. She didn't have a big concern after that. I think, you know, it's pretty straightforward. I mean, there's a double gate there where we're gonna access the site. That acres north of the house that you're familiar with at Catty Corner from Troy and Michelle's is, they used to irrigate that little small field. There's 4 small shallow ditches. We have to fill that in as part of that 50-foot easement. Then when we're done, we'd have to scoop it back out to replace it as we found it. The fence that separates the detention pond from their property, she swears that's our fence, so I'm not too concerned about that. It's not much of a fence. But otherwise, I mean, that's pretty much it. The 29th is we open bids, I believe, for this project. We're hoping to roll early October. So Linda called me yesterday and said her and Susan talked about a weekend, they're agreeable, so they signed it. Tomorrow I promised her I would have Mary or mail her a copy back for her records. And that's pretty much it. So I appreciate their willingness because it's not always that easy.
Any questions?
Yes. In this exhibit A, were the ball fields shown in the picture, and there's a kind of a shape drawn in beyond the fence of the outfield.
Mm-hmm.
Does that approximate the shape and size of the detention pond?
Pretty much. It's going to take the whole grass area outside that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's going to be big.
How deep did we say it was? 8 feet? 6?
Think 6. There's
Six.
there's portions of the one over here off Division that is gonna be a little bit deeper, but for the most part, it's around 6 with a 4-to-1 slope.
Yeah, they all have a 4-to-1 slope, so you can mow them, maintain them if you need to.
And the dirt that's excavated out of there is going over to the sewer lagoon, is that correct?
Most of it, yes.
Okay.
Part of it will go back into the existing detention pond on the site south of Anadarko or Occidental. Because there's an existing detention pond that we're moving, so we're gonna take the fill from the new one and move it into the old one so that we can, and then depending on how much excess fill there is, we may raise the whole town lot, which is east of the 2 detention ponds there, on the lot south of Occidental. We may raise that some, just because we may have enough material to do that, but we're gonna fill the empty cell at the lagoon first, and then go from there. And if we end up with more than we need over there, then we may end up with some of it up at the cemetery as well. So.
What about filling, the parking lot to the ball fields? Those, detention. We're getting those.
That'll be done next year as part of the Reynolds Avenue project.
Gotcha, okay.
Because Reynolds Avenue next year, which we'll talk about next month, will actually come down about 1.5 to 2 foot.
Gotcha.
So we'll use some of that material to cut to fill those in.
Perfect.
And we can't get rid of those yet.
I see, okay.
So.
That makes sense. Okay. Any other questions, comments, or concerns? I entertain a motion, please.
I move to approve that temporary construction easement with Linda Moorhead and Susan, how do you say it, Dias, as presented, and authorize the mayor to execute.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call, please, Mary.
Larry Clark,
Aye.
Jeremiah Overman,
Aye.
Nick Ralston,
Aye.
Spencer Bradnan,
Aye.
Fred Blum.
Aye.
Alright. It's exciting. Moving on, letter of support, Weld County crude oil exemption. Mr. Rankin.
Thank you, Mrs. Mayor. I'd actually sent this to Adrian earlier this past week. It came out from Elizabeth Rolford, Will County. So long story short, Will County invested millions of dollars in improving County Road 49, which is the Jersey Blacktop, people call it locally, from 76 North 34.
Freedom Parkway.
Freedom Parkway as well, yep. that's probably the more official term, is a big sign there, since they paid all the money. But apparently 49 had lost the petroleum exemption, which allows the hazardous materials and the big trucks to go on there. I'm not sure how that all happened, I'm not involved with that. But by all means, when I heard this, and I reached out to Dan Durkee, our fire district chief, he had not been contacted yet, but he was going to respond with his board as well. It makes complete sense that we support this to keep those trucks off 85, and that's why 49 was built and approved to begin with. For the oil rigs, the big rigs, the farm trucks, and the hazmat vehicles. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell for me, unless Mayor, you have anything to add, but I think it's wise to support this resolution to keep those dangerous trucks off 85, and 85 goes through all of our communities. Plus, we have enough accidents, right, Carl? We don't need more, so.
Yeah, I just wanted it to come before everybody here, before we send out the letter, and make sure we all agree as a team.
Exactly.
Any questions?
So is it gonna make it mandatory for all hazmat to go on that, or is
It
just
won't
that
be.
we're encouraging and we're supporting that?
Yeah, it just allows it, it's not mandatory.
I mean, now they can't even do it, so
Yeah.
just be an option.
Yeah, it'll give them a new hazmat, route.
And that's a straight line, it's wide, safe, highly visible. I think most truckers would probably take that depending on their destination.
I don't think they wanna be on a tight, busy highway anymore than we want them on a tight, busy highway.
I don't wanna be on.
Let's move on to sand and gravel trucks out there too. No more moving.
Did you hear that, Carl?
No, I've been.
Any other questions, comments, concerns? All right, entertain a motion, please.
Move to approve a letter of support for a petroleum exemption on Baldwin County Road 49 as presented.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call, please, Mary.
Jeremiah Overman,
Aye.
Nick Ralston,
Aye.
Spencer Bradnan,
Aye.
Troy Blum,
Aye.
Larry Clark.
Aye.
Okay, motion carried. Moving on to Surso Workers' Compensation and Property Casualty Coverage. Mr. Wright.
Thank you. This is something we have to approve before the 1st of October every year. From Sarasota, Mary works. You would not believe the amount of work that Mary has put into our renewal, because it's very detailed and defined as far as our FTEs, full-time employees, how we pay them, so on and so forth. So that's part of the renewal, but not this part. This is the financial part for work property casualty. In a nutshell, workers' comp went up about $7,300. We had some claims last year that we had to pay out that were fairly substantial. And we assessed that. Mary, myself, David, Carl, and Janet, we meet periodically, we review claims as needed, and most of them were typically police or sometimes public works because of the jobs that they do. And looking at them, I mean, could they be prevented? Probably, but they were classified as accidents. Property casualty, we had a pretty good year. I mean, no severe. I mean, the previous year we had some roof replacements and some water damage with the community center. This past year is a lot better. It only increased about $145. In each renewal, based upon our annual audit score, we typically receive a small credit. And our credit this year in workers' comp was $3,583, and in property casualty was $919. We had typically, I checked the box to apply that money toward our premiums or to reduce that amount. So our amounts going into 2021 would be $56,101 for workers' comp, which is $73.27 higher than last year. Property casualty is $61,977, which is $1,345 higher than last year. Overall, not terrible, but try to bring both of them down, and I sometimes have to scratch my head because I can't control that all the time. So,
Fire? That's what I'm.
what's that?
There's no way to find it.
Do that as Colorado burning, yeah.
Someone wants a copy on.
They say we're not to get some California stuff
Yes.
coming in.
I don't know if there's like, I'm sorry, I didn't.
No, you're.
I just smell smoke, it's like. That's it.
Yeah, I see now.
What's that?
Outside.
Oh, okay.
Fire department's next door.
It's from California.
Say what
usually get a little burning smell when the furnace kicks on, but not when the air conditioning kicks
All
on.
right. That's unnatural.
So that's a summary of the renewals. We pay them quarterly. Each year we pay quarterly basis. And the budget, it's split up between all the basic funds for work comp on the vendor. So there's not one line item that pays for one, so. That's all I ask.
Any other questions, comments, concerns? I would entertain a motion.
I move to approve 2021 renewal quotes from Sursa for workers' compensation and property casualty coverage as presented.
A motion and a second. Roll call, please, Mary.
Nick Ralston,
Aye.
Spencer Bradnan,
Aye.
Fred Blum,
Aye.
Larry Clark,
Aye.
Jeremiah Overman.
Aye.
All right, motion carried. Thank you, guys. Moving to the last action item, hazardous mitigation plan discussion. Mr. Ring.
Thank you. My approach with this is pretty straightforward and simple. There's some communities, especially larger communities, will make a whole community, very long public hearing presentation. I don't do that. I never have. This will be my third plan update since I've been town manager. Actually, on December 4th, 2018, the mayor signed a letter of participation that we start doing this update. So that's how long it takes. And we'll go out through, we meaning all municipalities in Will County, Roy Rudisill and Marine Leach are the Office of Emergency Management in Will County. They're spearheading it, organizing all the meetings, all the trainings. So what it comes down to is if we as a town do not participate actively, if a natural disaster or even a man-made disaster happens that qualifies for FEMA funding, we don't qualify. That's the bottom line. So in the packet, I showed what we did back in 2015 and 16. I remember speaking to the board briefly about it, but I've been here long enough where it's flooding, tornadoes, windstorms, snow blizzards, actually 85 in railroad accidents, so on and so forth. As you can see in the 5 years ago, we focused on emergency warning systems. So we added, after the 08 tornado, Gilchrist winter tornado, we obtained a grant through FEMA. Actually, Commissioner Kirkmeyer was the interim manager of Gilchrist at the time. She was between terms. She wrote the grant and obtained emergency generators for our town hall and 4 sirens. And this last year we added a 5th siren at Reed subdivision because it wasn't providing enough coverage. The Everbridge phone system was a focus 5 years ago. We implemented that. Updating emergency management plan, we talked about that earlier this year, which I'll be talking to the board again, probably in January. Updated again, along with the other plan we talked about as far as the board's plan. I can't remember right now. But I want to bring this up to you to see if you had any opinion or thought, other than what I briefly mentioned, that I should focus on this update as I move forward the next 3 to 4 months with Will County. So I focus on the major catastrophes. Like we experienced the tornado, we experienced, well, going back in time, the 06 blizzards were pretty bad to deal with if you lived here. The 08 tornadoes, 13 floods. We've had drought conditions, kind of what we're in now, but not too extreme. Fire hazards, hazmat issues on 85, UP, the chiefs dealt with that. So those are the big factors that I look at. But I don't believe, based upon my experience, that there's enough interest in the community making a community-wide, multiple public town hall meetings. I just didn't take that approach. So, but I want to be fully transparent with the board. This is the direction I've gone, and I want you to find go in the right direction. Or if you have anything else to add for me to work on.
I see they did add the COVID-19 stuff into this as well, so we're going to incorporate that with
I'm going to add some language that basically is a pandemic mitigation effort, kind of like what we're doing now.
Right.
So we're taking this, all communities are implement that in this update, because you can obviously obtain FEMA funding from that. By the way, the communities I've spoken to after 13 floods, especially Evans and LaSalle, FEMA funding is not easy, and even to this date, some of the funding that Evans has sought they still haven't obtained yet. So it's something that's out there, but you don't really want to have unless you absolutely need it. So I'm not downplaying FEMA, it's a very complicated process.
Well, was it the town manager Lyons in their investigation, because the way the funds were, they weren't tracking it right or something, and they were under the gun portion, some of that was the money they got, so it's very under the microscope, but you do receive it too.
And the process, I'll be honest with you, if we ever had that situation, and I remember Mary and I talked over the last few years that she was in Windsor when that tornado happened, I would ask the board to hire somebody to manage the paperwork. I could not do it, there's no way.
That makes sense.
I know Mary doesn't want to do it. No, she lived it. I mean, Carl and I were working that day when the tornado hit, and it sideswiped Gilchrist back in 08, and we didn't know at the time it was heading toward Windsor, but we were doing house-to-house searches, and I'll never forget, we came upon that farmer in the middle, his truck was in the median upside down. He was 200 yards away in the field. It pulled him out of his windows and sat him down the field outside of Gilchrist. He was walking back to the highway, didn't know what happened. I mean, just as quick stories. It's weird.
Wow.
So, and a
Mark,
great,
is air quality involved in this hazard mitigation plan? When I say that, I'm thinking too, we've had times in the last month where we've been in, hazardous for special groups, right?
yeah.
Almost for even worse than that. Let's say it's feasible to see that it would be worse for days on end or weeks potentially. That could get into a hazardous situation, right? Is that, I don't know how we plan for that or how we mitigate it, but that's why you put it in a plan like this, so we can start to strategize, right?
Exactly. Even with COVID-19, I'm not going to focus on COVID-19, I'm going to focus on pandemics. It could be something else, it could be the bubonic plague or something. And as long as you're generic enough that you identify it as a mitigating effort, I mean, we can't mitigate air quality, but if you identify it as a hazard in your community, you may get funding to help cover some costs for some mitigation efforts. Respirators, I don't know.
Right.
I mean, that's a tough one, because that's pretty vague.
Absolutely.
I mean, the fires alone, I mean, you can do mitigation for, replanting vegetation for mudslides, to regrowth, the mountainside, but as far as air quality, that's a tough one. So, I remember in 13 when we had the floods, people were worried that Platte would be washed off, and
You've got extreme temperatures on here. So
extreme temperatures,
that's pretty broad.
exactly.
So if you get that on there, I'm just saying,
Yeah.
I think maybe air quality might have a real
I'm not worried about the bubonic plague.
I know,
Is that,
even knock on
is that
wood.
2020, 2021 version?
Yeah. So it's still going to take until the end of this year, and then the entire plan is packaged. As indicated in my report, I mean, the plan is over 500 pages long. I just gave you the snippet that's about those portions of the plan. And I did download that in the server, by the way, Mary, because that would have taken longer memory. But I'm working with Will County. I think there's another meeting coming up, a training. They even sent Adrian like a quick little survey to do, for the mayor has to be part of it. But I pretty much handle it. So if you have any thoughts, suggestions, let me know.
Which I'm very grateful for, because that is a lot of work. I was going through every email and it's like, oh boy.
Oh,
Let
just
me know,
like,
let me know.
Hey, now, just a simple question, is there like man-caused catastrophes in this as well?
Like hazmat situations, train derailments,
Peaceful protest?
that probably not, but I would have to look into that one.
I mean, I'm not saying that we'd be targeted,
I
but
don't know
it
if
could.
there's such a thing called a peaceful
Well,
protest.
okay, alright.
Oh, right, okay, sorry.
I'm confused.
You have a right to protest.
It's protest.
Yeah,
Peaceful,
but-
so absolutely there
but
is.
peaceful
such thing.
protest-
The Constitution now
I think you know
as long as you don't hurt somebody or destroy the property.
Let's say some demonstrations decide to come through and tear up the town. Would that be something that would be,
I would have to see, I've never experienced that before.
and I'm just off the wall,
Yeah, typically, it's Mother Nature events, it's natural events, typically.
just something to think of.
Yeah.
Well, some communities are dealing with this, so it's something that
Well, that's
we
what
need to
made me
put
think.
on the radar.
That's all. 2020 is one heck of a year, alright, that's all I'm saying. We should plan for the worst and hope for the best.
Yeah. I had talked to Lay today that they're on 4th of July, they had a New Year's Eve party thinking they'd restart the year.
Gonna work.
Did they forget about the night though? To them, it might have. Happy New Year.
Exactly, so, see, most of this is in the handout. Will County actually puts most of these stats together, and what I do is I actually work on mitigation steps, which is more of your green shade areas that are the expected cost, the objectives, so on and so forth. So that's typically what I focus on mostly. But otherwise, that's pretty much it on my part.
It's hard without a crystal ball to make sure you have everything covered. Can you update this before the 5-year update? At least our portion of it?
What do you mean, am I updating it now?
Well, yeah, can we update, yeah, every 5 years we update it, but can we update it, let's say 2 years from now?
We can locally,
Okay.
it just, people won't accept it, they do a mandatory 5-year update.
Okay, until Will
So-
County updates everybody.
Exactly. Annually, we can take a look at it and update it, but it's not something that we submit to the team except every 5 years.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah. So,
All right. Any other questions regarding that? All righty. Moving on, we're gonna go to reports. Can everybody has the rec senior report?
I failed to mention Jan is with her family in South Dakota. She'll be back Friday. She had a long weekend ahead with movie night and softball and senior barbecue
Yes.
Volleyball.
and volleyball. Yes, I didn't mention volleyball, but volleyball.
Were there any questions that maybe Troy could help with? The city department, that anyone have?
I gave her grief that she's gone tomorrow, and I do my first audit with CDOT on her bus, so I need to thank her for that.
All
I
right.
think that was just coincidence.
Makes me wonder.
All right, moving on to Chief Brett.
Thank you, Mrs. Mayor. So we are hiring. We're losing a line officer that we've had for a couple of years. He started off in the schools, went to the road, and he's moving on. So I advertised a week ago or so, and it seems to be we're getting more that want to be a line officer than work in the schools. So we're hiring an SRO and a line officer, and I've already got a couple lots for line officers. So, I'm hopeful, and hopefully we'll get someone hired here soon for his replacement.
Chief, you want to mention other towns hiring too?
Yeah, so we're up against LaSalle's hiring 2, and Lupton is hiring, and so is almost all the agencies around us are hiring officers right now. So, but we're receiving apps, so we'll hope the best. We only need one.
What are the differences in pay?
A lot,
Yeah.
just to be quite honest. I mean, we have some incentives here that they don't have in other towns, long weekends, more exposure, slower pace. We don't micromanage, you have to write X amount of tickets, whereas they absolutely do in other towns. I mean, so we have a lot to offer here, and I think word of mouth has made it around Weld County a little bit. That's why we're receiving apps, at least that's my hope. But as far as salary goes, the next lowest would maybe be LaSalle, and they started about 7,000 more than us, 7,000 to 8,000 more. And that's just for the agencies that's right around us. Everyone else is substantially higher. I think Lupton's hiring at 16 more a year. And then Frederick, Johnstown, all the larger small agencies are just hiring close to 60. So it's pretty substantial, but like I said, we offer some stuff here that they absolutely don't. I think they realize that, and the word of mouth. And we have some officers here that worked in a larger agency and specifically wanted to come here for those reasons, and it's not all about money.
Okay.
So I'm just staying hopeful about this. So.
Sure.
Other than that, we did sex offender compliance checks, and all is well on that front. And got our CNGs, and that's about it. So anything, I'm happy to answer any questions you guys have, though.
Do we target, experienced officers, or have you looked at, do they have to be like post-certified, or have we looked at, you know, people that have got the criminal justice degree looking to get their foot in the door, then we can send them to a post-academy, or?
It usually depends on the circumstance in the agency. So we used to want someone that has some years on because the officers that we had were new. And so it would be nice to have some years of experience on. Right now, we have a lot of seasoned officers here, so we'd be more than happy to get somebody new, fresh out of an academy that wants to work here, even as a short while. I say a short while. If we can hang on to them for a couple of years, and even if they want to move on, we'd be happy to have them here for a couple of years. So,
right.
As far as offering to hire someone, send them to an academy, that's risky. First, it's expensive. Your average academy runs $9,000 to $16,000, and then a lot of agencies that they have that, they make them sign saying we'll
For 5 years.
right. You have to sign on with us for however many years, and then obviously salary and everything else. I mean, there's other agencies, Weld County Sheriff's Office, and whatnot, that they will send you through an academy and start at a larger salary too. Some agencies offer the take-home car thing. I mean, a lot of people want to come here and they specifically want to work here for this agency or this small town or a small town similar too. So.
Do we offer a small car take home now?
No, that I know a year ago you guys kind of mentioned that a little bit. They're not a take-home car. I think you guys kind of talked about a take-home car on your weekend, and then me and the Sarge have take-home cars in the event we have had to respond out, which we have several times. But as far as line officers go, they do not have take-home cars right now that you guys as the town manager have.
I thought we approved that last year because we talked about adding that, you know, you can only do so much for salary, but then we talked about, well, if you have that take-home car while they're on duty, the hours.
I remember the discussion was for the chief and the sergeant.
That was for all of them.
And for the public works director and whoever was on call.
We did consider for all officers, but it wasn't implemented. We looked at it, but Carl and I talked, and part of that program is we have to ensure that our units are maintained while they're off. Plus, we don't have enough. People think we have a ton of units, which we really don't, and we don't have enough for everybody to have their own take-home car. So that's something that I want to bring back up in budget.
You're right. We have officers that live in a house and they can leave it inside, and we have some officers that they don't live in a house and it's higher risk sitting outside in a parking lot. We have enough units for people to have a take-home car on their work week, leaving it on their weekend. And I know that we talked about that too. So.
Yeah. Bottom line is I wasn't comfortable because we didn't have enough insurances, and these cars are very expensive.
I remember the discussion coming up that we didn't have enough, so we discussed about taking them home, but on their weekends, they leave it here. Differences in what's animal call and report status. Report stats. Animal calls and animal call. Just, I don't know why I never noticed that.
And are you looking at this one or the other one? Chart.
Then what are the differences where animal calls and animal call?
That's a good question. I don't know if that's how they log it. If it's more than one animal running at large, for example, versus a dog running at large. I'm not sure what makes it be an animal.
So was it maybe like multiple people called on an animal, maybe barking for calls, and then animal call, like somebody reported a huge dog running around, just one person. I didn't know if that was the difference.
And I honestly, I could ask how it is that they.
Just curiosity.
Yeah, I'm not sure why that would even matter if it's a one or two, or how they didn't lump it all into one line there. The animal calls. I don't have an answer for it. I can find out.
That was just a
Yeah.
curious question. I was just
The system they have for their reports, it's preset, and I'm not sure how to answer that myself.
No, I can have, I mean, I can ask, I'm sure there's a reason behind it, I don't know it off.
Any other questions, comments, concerns? All right, thank you, Chief Ware. Moving on to Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Mrs. Mayor. Under the water system, we repaired 2 water lines yesterday, as you guys are probably well aware with the phone calls that went out. And, it ended up being down in Bella Vista, the leak that showed up on Saturday and then we weren't able to find. It actually appeared about where Jeremiah is sitting and it ended up where I'm sitting is where the leak was. That's one of those patch jobs that we'll be adding to. I hope that's not my whole 10,000 right there in that one spot. It surfaced and appeared to be running over there. They dug down in that location because 99% of the time you dig down where you've got the most significant amount of water showing up, and that's where your leak is. They noticed when they got there that the pavement was kind of cavitated a little bit underneath, not a lot, about 6-8 inches. And they had another soft spot about the middle of the room here, so they dug down there. And but they started digging there and realized that wasn't where it was. And so that's when we pulled the plug on Saturday afternoon. We plated the road, we closed the road, we put equipment around the leak so that we didn't end up losing somebody into a sinkhole. You hear those horror stories of a water line sinkhole where a car goes into it or something like that. So then they came back on Monday morning and we re-attacked it and ended up finding a 6-inch AC line, which is the older asbestos concrete line, was cracked right outside the valve about where I'm sitting. So it was literally 25-30 feet apart. We were able to put a band around that crack and reseal it and not have to replace the pipe and replace the fitting and everything else. So that was good. Once we found it, it was a fairly easy fix. The other one was a service line that was leaking on the town side of the meter and curb stop over off of Olive Lane. The only known casualty there was a lady that is not part of Everbridge, and it was her birthday, and she went to take a shower about the time we turned the water off, so she wasn't real happy because she was supposed to go have lunch with her girlfriends, and so I heard about that and ended up calling her back and visiting with her, and she returned a phone call and was a little more pleasant the second time. But other than those 2 leaks, I don't have anything to add to the report. We did talk some already about the backflow preventers. That new ordinance will help with some of what we're dealing with there on the sanitary survey, and be happy to attempt to answer any other questions.
The inspections of the tank. The inspection methods, the timing, including possible alternative schedules to avoid climbing the tanks during winter months.
So the current inspection requirements are you have to inspect once a quarter unless you have an alternative schedule that's approved by the state. So during the last couple of years, there's been a couple of times where the weather was nice enough in the last quarter in November or something for me to climb the tank. But there were also times in January, February, March where it wasn't nice enough that I wasn't going up a 50-foot tank in the snow on a ladder to stand on top of a metal roof and hope I stayed up there when the wind was blowing to look at it. And so the state is looking at modifying the requirement to only 2 times a year, as long as it's not within 30 days of each other and as long as it's not more than 8 months apart. So basically you could go up in April or May and go up again in September or October and look at the tanks and make sure that something hasn't happened to the top. We can wander around the tank any time of year, and we do that on the basis. But there, so that's what the tank inspection, then every 5 years, we have to have the tanks thoroughly inspected on the inside and cleaned. So, I don't think it's 21, I think it's in 22 that we're due, because I think it was in 17 the last time we did that type of inspection of the tank, where we put divers in. They go into the tank, they take a swimming pool vacuum system with them and suck the little bit of silt and debris that had gotten into the tank out. They do a thorough inspection, they look, and in 17 and 18, we had them do the underwater food safe epoxy on some of the rust spots and some of the other things like that. So we have to do that every 5 years. We have to do the quarterly unless we modify it. I didn't realize we could modify, so on the quarterly report, I had said I didn't climb the tank, because I was honest. So I didn't do the topside inspection of the tank during the cold months when it wasn't in my physical favor to try and get up there. And so it's those types of paperwork things that we need to clarify with the state and make sure, and that's part of what's going on. The other violations, the tier 2 notifications, the annual backflow report, I didn't have that done, but I got it completed. But that is a tier 2, which is a 30-day notice. So we got an 11-page letter from the state that on the front page of the letter, it says you have 45 days to respond to this. And then on page 8, it says, oh yeah, by the way, you've got 30 days to put this notice out. And it's due September 23rd. So the 45 days on the front page was like, oh, wait a minute, you know? Yeah. So there will be a letter going out saying we had these 3 violations, 2 of which have already been resolved. One of them is, that has not yet, is the getting more of the existing backflow preventers tested that haven't, they've been tested in the past, but they haven't been tested in the past 12 months. So.
Yeah, I was just wondering if there was we're gonna put like grading or something up there for a walk path. But if it does though, if they were requiring it, but if they're talking about just doing twice a year, but yeah, like a 2-inch raised grading, that still would fall through and you still have tracks looking directly on that. Didn't know if that was something in the works that you're possibly thinking of doing.
Not if we can
safety
help
aspect
that.
on that.
Not if we can help it. So, are there other questions?
Yes. Could you give me a brief report about the status of your backhoe? And the second part of this is, will you be including in the next year's budget proposal the cost to replace one?
Talk about a loaded question.
Not to want us to honor anything.
Are you feeding him questions over here, Shirley?
I've got the answer, I'm just curious to see.
I like to defer to Troy
We've
over that
talked about your backhoe before, right? And, you know, we've talked about your backhoe before and how much you use it. And I think that at least you're familiar with my position regarding the backhoe. I'm just curious as to what your thoughts are.
And I appreciate you bringing that up. I'm sure we'll be having more discussions on this during budget. And to answer the second question first, yes, I'm planning to include as part of the budget request from the Public Works Department the funding to go ahead and pursue after the first of the year a new backhoe for the Public Works Department. We did just fix a tire on it today. The tires do need to be replaced, but if it looks promising that we will be getting a new hoe, I probably can suffer through and figure out how to get function with what we've got on there until the beginning of the year versus investing. I mean, those big tires on the back are around $500–600 a piece. Front tires are between $300 and $400 a piece. So, you know, it would it'd be $2,000–2,500 by the time we have somebody come down and get them put on for us and that kind of thing. And not that that's a bad investment, because you know, if we end up with a bad winter prior to January 1, and then however long it takes to get the hoe, we may end up spending that money on those tires anyway. I haven't looked at it enough to know if those tires would be something we could salvage and pull back off and hang on to put on another hoe, depending on which type we end up getting. I actually contacted Meade this last week and I'm gonna be going over to take a look at the one that they got this last year. See if, when I read their spec, it did look like it had some of the options that we would like to be able to potentially have, but when I talked to their manager, it sounds like they did get those. So I'm not sure what I wasn't reading in the spec, or if they had another secret spec book that they didn't publish or what. I'm not sure. So we did pull off the heads, have them ground and put back, but we've still got a significant oil leak on the machine. So we are staying ahead of that right now and keeping it functional and operational, but that is an issue with it. I can't quote you exactly how many hours it has on it, and I want to say it's a 99, but I don't remember that for sure either. So I would have to double check the year, and I'll have that information when we come back. So.
Any other questions, comments, or concerns for Mr. Brand? All right, thank you, David, very much. Moving on, everyone got their attorney report.
The attorney report?
Nope.
I got, oh, that's the report.
Yes.
That's not a report, it's just, Kendra was gonna do a report the first meeting of the month. And she may or may not the first meeting of October, just depending on what she has going on. I don't pay for her to do a report if I don't have to, unless there's something that she needs to.
All right, moving on to Mr. Rankin.
One item from my written report, and I'll discuss a few others, any questions you may have, is the Platteville Business Relief Fund application. I basically have that done. I'm still waiting to talk to Rich Warren of Upstate. Yesterday, Adrian was busy, so I jumped on a conference call. I jumped on a conference call with Don Warner, Will County Commissioners, and I think 22 other municipalities. And to summarize, Mr. Warner, working with, Warden, working with Mr. Warner from Upstate, advised that there wasn't a lot of requests being made today from municipalities. And part of it is, as I discussed with the board, I mean, there's a lot of restrictions. I mean, I'd love to put in some long-term improvements, but you can't put any long-term improvements in. I can build a mash unit outside the front window for COVID patients. I mean, not to be funny or not, but that's what it's for, but we don't have that need. So, my recommendation to be blown with the board as of today is we have over 20,000 expenditures that we've paid for out of cleaning supplies and backpacks for foggers. I'm going to ask the board if I can just submit that in and get the 20,000 back. And once we have it back, then you guys can decide what you can spend the money on. So why go after something we don't know will be refunded or reimbursed, not refunded, when we know we spent stuff out of our budget that wasn't budgeted, so why not go after that, take that route? That's just another town to do it. There's about 35,000 that the board authorized me to do a couple of main capital projects that I'm not comfortable doing, because I don't think we'll get reimbursed. So at least let me go out to that 21,000. I've talked to Devin about the most recent update, so we can make up some more supplies. I submitted the check to Upstate Colorado for the county relief fund. I haven't received a receipt yet for that. And then the 11,000 for the Platteville fund. Again, I have an application ready. I'll reach out to Rick Warren tomorrow and ask him why he wanted to discuss it with me. Because the point of it is, we don't want to, number one, we don't want to duplicate applications. Okay, so it's illegal for the CARES Act. So I don't know if he wants to be amended or whatever, but for some reason he hasn't reached out back out to me. But in a nutshell, towns are struggling to find ways to use these funds based upon the strict guidelines that we've been given. So
the business relief fund is one pretty direct route that we can spend those funds. Right?
Exactly. So
do it.
And Don Warren said at the end of September, early October, he's going to reassess all the applications, or as far as the funding request, because there's another half, or we basically have another 70,000 that we allocated. So my approach is, let me submit what I can. I know it's at least 21,000. Get that reimbursed. But the rest of that 35,000 that the board was gonna give to me to like, just put to the Platteville business relief on all of it, all the rest of it, did it 15,000. So there'd be about 25,000 for local Platteville business. And you don't have a deadline, the only deadline is December 31st, so you still have some time, but we're running out of time.
Well, and I see we're running out of time because we're telling the businesses, here's the Weld County Fund, or you can apply for whatever we do.
Yeah.
But the Weld County Fund, the first closure is the end of September. And so you're putting businesses in, what should I do? Do I wait for Platteville? What, do I go with Weld County? And if we don't even have ours written up and they know what they're up against, I feel like we're putting them in a corner.
Exactly. What Weld County has done, and that's maybe what Richard wanted to talk to me about, is they set application deadlines. To me, I would ask for you to have a revolving, rolling application.
Mm-hmm.
Every 2 weeks when you meet as a board, if you have applications, make the decision on the application.
Mm-hmm.
It needs to be a revolving application process.
Yeah, I don't.
Because businesses don't work otherwise.
Right.
They're not government. So that'd be my recommendation. Let me talk to Rich, and our next special meeting on the 29th, but definitely by October 6th. I'll have it completely ready for you guys to go, and we'll go from there. Okay?
Perfect.
Today was somewhat of a busy day, at least an information day for me. Tim Bellebrand from CDOT reached out to me. Fort Lupton recently counter-offered with CDOT on their demolition of Denver Avenue, and CDOT accepted it. That took all of 2020 demolition funds. So on the bright side, we're now #1 in the demolition chain, but there's no funds. So hopefully 2021 we can devolve Main Street.
I've heard this #1 story before.
I know, we're #1 at losing right
Yeah,
now.
right.
But at least after 3 years, Fort Lupton obtained their funding. So, and it's been almost 3 years. I was just behind the queue on their application.
What does their funding look like?
Tim didn't tell me. Someone reached out to Chris, the manager of Fort Lupton Small. Initially, he told me they were going after about $3.5 million to devolve Denver, their main drag, by Pier 4 all the way down past the school, basically.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure what they got. And then I reached out to, well, I received a call or email from Greg Larson in Pacific Railroad. This next month, the board will receive a purchase and sell agreement. So UP Management in Omaha have finally agreed to that 100-foot right of way from County Road 30 up to basically what they call 30 and a half, the first half mile. And they sent me a map. We're going to get that at no cost. And after calling Ms. Camp for the last 5 months, she actually answered today. She's going to talk to her cousin Phyllis. They are joint owners of the other half mile up to 32. And she asked if we could meet David and I and her and Phyllis probably at the end of October and discuss obtaining that easement so we can actually pursue South Front Street. We have $1 million given to us by CDOT to build that road. And then 30 would be closed. That's PUC. Or CDOT preferably. But when I was talking to Greg Larson, Greg asked me back about the crossing arms that they installed at 34. And there's no power to them. That's why they're not ready yet. So I got a hold of Lucas McConnell, XL Regional Manager at Fort Collins. And he told me 2 things. Number 1 is that's actually in the queue to be done in the next few weeks for UP. So that crossing, Carl, just so you know, to the officers, it will start probably October, will be fully operational. To keep that safe crossing at County 34. And then he said either Thursday, Monday, or Tuesday, Sturgeon Electric will be in Platteville, walking Main Street, prepared to do the underground. I know, it's a shock. So, David still doesn't believe me, but that's actually, that's what Lucas said. So he, greased the squeaky wheel and got things going.
Good Lord.
So some things are starting to move forward. So we can get the undergrounding help. I'm sorry?
3 years in the making?
3 years in the making.
3.5 if you want to get better.
That's right.
David's not counting.
From a planning phase, he said, Ford Park.
Yes.
So, I mean, some positives. I mean, at least we had the UP heard. I was teasing Greg Larson. I said, usually UP takes me forever on such agreements, but this is a situation where, you know, UP came through. And the reason they came through is they really want 30 closed. Desperately want 30 closed.
Yep.
Want something.
And they also want 34 signal lines, so I helped them, you know, scratch my back, I scratch yours. They got hold of Lucas and we got that rolling. So hopefully the undergrounding on Main Street will be done. We'll add the conduit for future street lights for our project that we'll pursue, hopefully next year too. And the last thing is, the 7-Eleven was supposed to move in yesterday. There's 2 pieces of equipment over there, but they're not really mobilized yet. But along Vasquez 85, there's for our sign that they're going to put a monopole sign. The 2 poles, the typical gas station sign poles, for the big ones. And there's going to be a marquee one right outside at Grand Avenue, basically facing Town of 85. But what they're requesting is, per our code, the sign is, the maximum size is 96 square foot. They're requesting one that's 112 square foot. So per the code, they have to get a variance to the Board of Adjustments. So I'm letting you know they'll be calling the Board of Adjustments together once 7-Eleven submits their application for a hearing. Mary's excited, I can tell.
Yes, I can see the face.
So
Those people are hard to get on the phone.
David, I met with
We need
Mike.
help.
David, I met with Mike Evans this morning, so he knows because he's now the chair of the Board of Adjustments.
Okay.
And I think we've called him. This would be number 4.
It's the 4th time.
Never heard of the Board of Adjustment yet.
3 times. One for the height variance, the most recent for
The
the
fire
fire
department
station,
height variance.
and twice over the years for the silos of the elevators at Bay State Milling because of the height variance. And they've all been approved. Interesting. So yeah, that's coming up. I don't know when, but we'll call that. Depending on timing, I like to call it right before a regular board meeting, so we're not, you know, at least I, Mary, are not meeting multiple nights because October we already have 5 scheduled meetings. So that's all I have. Any questions you may have? It's a busy day. I like it. Things are going on.
Yes.
Preparing for budget. I don't really have any surprises, but I think Larry and David set me up a little bit ago about the backhoe question, to be honest with you.
I'm innocent on that one, boss. I'm innocent.
I want to speak with my attorney before making any comments.
But yeah, it's definitely time. That piece of equipment is so heavily used by Public Works, and it needs to be replaced. It's been here before my time. I've been here 16 years.
20+ years, it doesn't owe you any money.
No, but it's heavily used, and it has to be reliable because that's the only thing we have besides the trucks.
Well, you get a lot of versatility out of it. It addresses a lot of different things.
Everything from water leaks to funerals to ice scraping to snow plowing to you name it. So I'll bring it up in budget.
Perfect.
Mayor, all yours.
All right, I just have a couple of things. If anybody has any problems with the agenda, you're more than welcome to call myself or Phil. Really appreciated, since maybe we don't agree, but we work as a team to get things done for the better good of the people. And then I wanted to verify that we will be adding the financials to the action items the second week of October, the second meeting of October.
Yes, ma'am.
As compromise.
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. And it'll be the end of the 3rd quarter, so we'll have 75% of the budget elapsed.
It'll be good timing in conjunction with the budget.
Yep.
So you'll see what we're looking at for our budget. Yep.
Awesome. But other than that, I didn't have anything else. Anybody have any questions?
I just had a couple of quick ones for Troy. First one, that report, the manager's report that you put out this month was incredible. It was like a really good one, very informative. Thank you for that. What do you think the feasibility of this Hayes Market and their bottom line request? Is that something Platteville can sustain at this time?
Probably not.
Being $100,000 a week, just for the record? Probably not.
Very, very unlikely at this point without, unless, if we had no confirmed growth, which I talked to the family about, which we don't, as far as residential rooftop. We have a good daily employee base, so that's not sustainable enough. because the majority of our heavy employee base is oil and gas related, and that's a volatile market. Right now, the Occidental site's still not at full capacity as it was before, not the pandemic, it was before the oil market crashed. It's still not full capacity. I mean, the full capacity is over 1,000 employees daily. I mean, there's still probably about 500 out there on a daily basis. So those are the factors that we're looking at. And they're always open to it. They're going to reach out to their vendor, their supplier, to see if, you know, what it needs to build the other, but I'm very doubtful. I mean, it just.
They do studies to see how many people shop at Peak Supers and places like that to see what the.
I'd be underestimating. I mean, there's a lot of people that don't want it, like you said, go to Peak Supers, just because of the recent times. I built a pole, some from Gilchrist. I don't know, maybe not 100,000.
Yeah, the other factor, you tell they're an experienced family. I mean, they run the Hayes Morgan, Johnstown, Bertha. The other thing, you gotta look at your current density in your rooftops, your residential base. I mean, the vast majority of the residents commute outside of Platteville for employment. So that's going to impact, you know, on the way home, they'll stop by King's or Safeway or Walmart and grab their bulk shopping and not wait till they get home. Because that their studies and research shows that if, you know, the over 50% of your population worked in your community, that would be a different story. It would deter them to go outside since they're already here. So those are the things we talked about. Which, you know, we're kind of a veteran community.
Well, that's the same thing in Johnstown. There's not a lot of industry here in Johnstown that they have one.
So they have they have 5 times the growth, the residential
Right.
base.
Yeah.
So percentage-wise, it's sustainable to them.
Right.
It's sustainable.
Because
So
their business is gonna keep going up for more rooftops that they build, right?
the only thing we talked about that could sway that decision is they are not a developer. So they acquired both their buildings basically in Johnstown and Bertha. They didn't build them. In Johnstown, they actually used to be where the old liquor store is on that old business district. Then they relocated over there. So having a developer come in and build the site for them to lease would save them a tremendous amount of capital. And several $1 million to get started. I mean, that's no chump change. But, I mean, there's ways to work it. It's unlikely, but it looks like having a developer go in, like the Platteville Commons years ago, and build a site to release out. But if you're building a site that big, and you want some assurances you're going to lease it,
Have an acre.
you know, so something like Platteville Commons is pretty easy. Anything can go in there. A barber shop or whatever, you know, Subway, Taco Bell. So I'm still working on it, but to answer your question, it's very unlikely.
Thank you.
So I'm not gonna stop trying.
No, absolutely, I appreciate it.
Yeah, the door's open for conversations.
Absolutely.
And then the last one, did you ever hear anything back from the attorneys on the Platte River farm? That sort of land use agreement thing we were talking about that was holding up everything, or that
It's a
is?
surface use agreement. Yeah, Ken Backstrom still represents Platte River Farms. I haven't talked to him in a little bit. But he was going on his end. This is actually pre-COVID, to be honest with you. It was early spring, late winter. And then things came up obviously on his end.
Not have anything else going on, right?
Yeah, exactly. But he thought he could discuss with Occidental because they're the service use owners, the subsurface use owners. That's their wells. And ever since not the merger, the buyout with Anadarko by Occidental, things really just stalled. You can't really get anything done, according to my sources about. I mean, even the people I used to contact about donations for Harvest Daze. I mean, some aren't there anymore, and then the one I talked to before Harvest Daze said, we just can't commit anything because Occidental doesn't know if they have any funds for donations. So things like that is frustrating. So going back to Platte River Farms, I'm going to reach out again to them about the optimism that can happen this year. To be honest with you.
It'd be nice to get something done eventually.
It would be. The positive note is talking to Melissa today, that PD agreement for West Farm will come to you on the special meeting on the 29th, so that looks like it's all but done, pretty close. So that 8-acre parcel along at the river, right on the north side of the bridge, bridge, immediately on the north side of the bridge between the river and number 23 that goes north. That first 8 acres will be dedicated to the town upon completion of, you signing that agreement next month, or later this month.
I saw some cows on that. Is there some sort of agreement we have to make with the farmer? Or what do we got there?
Cow tipping.
Well, we're gonna have to build a fence, right?
Well, that whole parcel is currently being used for cows, so we would have to somehow secure that, if you will, because the way the river is now, you just walk across. Yeah, you just walk across.
Yeah.
Yeah, people put political signs in the river now and all that kind of good
We are not going there.
stuff. Sorry, it's gone. But,
Looks like they put it up higher.
but anyway. Excuse my last comment, Mayor, but yeah, we would have to do something there at some point to secure that if we want people to actually visit it and not have cattle.
Right, because we are, I don't remember the terminology, but we have to fence in our own property, because cattle have the right to the ground.
Yeah, Wall County is a free roam county.
Yes, thank you.
If you don't have a fence, they can go where they want, it's completely legal.
You don't think towns and people will associate?
What's
Come
that?
on, you don't think towns and people can associate?
Well, my concern is cows may disappear.
I'm gonna try to play down there. I wanna step in a bunch of poop all the time.
Then you have a pie contest.
So, I was just gonna say, Shirley used to be pretty good at the cow patty.
The
throwing.
throw pie,
That's
yeah,
right.
we did that.
Yep.
I bet there's a new rec schedule.
It was part of Harvest Daze.
Yes.
Bring it back.
Did you just volunteer for the Harvest Daze committee next year?
No, I didn't, but I just. We used to do a lot of things. though.
Yes.
But that's the way it goes. You have an outhouse race. Remember that, anybody? Probably not.
How do you do that?
Walden
You
still
had
does it.
the outhouse, the race from one end of town to the other, right down Main Street.
Yep, put them on wheels.
The one
You
that's
go
in my
steal an outhouse
backyard.
and then rig it.
That came in second, cause it was the original one.
Netherlands Dead Man.
And the
Did anybody
portable
make
one.
it past the ditch down there?
Yes,
Bring some of this back.
We
Yeah,
had
that'd be a
person-
People have personality.
You're gonna have to write those down so we
Person
can.
sitting in the outhouse even.
Somebody's gotta steer, right?
Anyway.
That's great.
About a porta potty race.
Ah, that's cheap.
We can get race in Platteville. That would be a win.
Yeah, Walden still does the out races.
Yeah.
All right, anything else before the board? All right, we stand adjourned. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.